What's going on, everybody? Kalipus Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be doing a quick comparison between the Motorola Moto G 5G 2023 and the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G. Now, as always, if you want to learn more about either phone individually, be sure to check out the description, where I am linking to several other videos about them, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But with that being said, let's get into it. So with the Moto G 5G 2023, we're getting a 6.5-inch 120Hz IPS LCD display with a 720p resolution, a PPI of 270, and a 20:9 aspect ratio. With the A23 5G, we're getting a slightly larger 6.6-inch PLS LCD display. This phone also has a 120Hz refresh rate. We're also getting a 1080p resolution, a PPI of 400, and a 20:9 aspect ratio. So in general, these displays are pretty similar. They both have a nice smooth refresh rate, so that's always cool. I feel like it's not really a huge difference, but in general, it makes them feel a bit more premium to use. But aside from that, the size is roughly the same. The A23 5G again is a bit larger, but it is pretty close. That being said though, the main difference here of course is the image quality. With the 1080p resolution versus, again, 720p with the Moto G 5G, the image on the A23 5G is going to be quite a bit sharper, so if you're doing stuff like watching videos for example, where the image quality is a bit more important, you will get a much better experience with the A23 5G. In addition to this, I feel like while the difference may or may not be that big, the A23 in general is a bit brighter, and the viewing angles are slightly better too, so while neither phone is going to be particularly great for super bright areas like outside in the sun for example, the A23 5G is going to fare a little bit better, but in general, again, the main difference here is the resolution. So if you are looking for something that has a really nice crisp image, the A23 5G will have an advantage. But if you're maybe not consuming a ton of content, or maybe you're mostly doing stuff like reading where the image quality isn't super important, then keep in mind in that case, the Moto G 5G will still get the job done. Now for storage, with the Moto G 5G, we're getting 128GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion, and with the A23 5G, we're getting 64 with microSD card expansion as well. Now, first of all, keep in mind, with the Moto G 5G, this phone in my hand is factory unlocked, and if you get it from, say, Cricket for example, or really any other US carrier, the storage could be different. Now, off the top of my head, I really don't know, but I do know for a fact that this phone in my hand again does have 128GB. So if you're looking at the Moto G 5G and you want that much storage, then you can always get it factory unlocked. On the other hand though, with the A23 5G, every version of this phone only has 64, so with this phone, that's pretty much what you're stuck with. So if you are someone who tends to put a bit more stuff on your phone, if you have lots of maybe apps and games and stuff like that that you typically can't put on a microSD card, the Moto G 5G will have an advantage. But if you're maybe more of a light user and you're not really putting a ton on your phone, then keep in mind, despite not being a ton of storage, 64GB even at this point in 2023 is at least acceptable. So as long as you're mindful of what you're putting on your phone, and you make sure to offload stuff like photos and videos onto a microSD card, you will still be okay here. Now for security features, both phones have face unlock, and they both have fingerprint scanners right here on the power keys. But starting with the Motorola, let's give them a try. There we go. One more time. And there we go. And now for the A23 5G. There we go. One more time. And there we go. So as you can see, real fast and responsive, no issues at all. And again, remember, both phones have face unlock too, so definitely nice to get two options here. Now taking a look at the camera setups, with the Moto G 5G, up front, we got a real nice looking hole punch design for the selfie camera. This camera is 8 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a dual camera with a 48 megapixel main camera and a 2 megapixel macro camera. So not necessarily a ton of features here, but at least we are getting a macro camera. And in case you're wondering, despite not having a dedicated depth sensing camera, it's really just built into the main camera. So portrait mode still works perfectly fine. And then with the A23 5G, up front, we got a water drop notch design for the selfie camera. Not really quite as nice looking. I guess it's okay, but with the Motorola, having the hole punch definitely makes the phone look and feel a bit more premium. With the A23 5G, this camera is also 8 megapixels. Then on the back, we get a quad camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. So in general, a few more features here, but overall the main difference is that with the A23 5G, we are getting an ultra wide camera, whereas unfortunately with the Moto G5G, despite at least having a macro camera, this phone does not have an ultra-wide camera. And again, remember, the depth sensing camera really doesn't matter a whole lot because with the A23 5G, it is really just a separate camera, whereas with the Motorola, again, it is basically just part of the main camera, so you're not really going to notice any kind of difference. Now, to give you an idea of what each phone can do, first, here's some pictures taken with the Moto G5G 2023. So overall, definitely great quality here. Not really a whole lot more to say about it. I mean, if you're looking for the highest quality photos you can possibly get, then obviously you're going to want to spend quite a bit more and get something like a Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra, for example. But in general, for normal daily use, I do think the photo quality here is perfectly fine. For stuff like Instagram, for example, you really don't need an insanely high-end camera for something like that. I mean, for a platform like that, keep in mind, they will compress the images anyway. So even if you have like a DSLR photo, the difference between something like that and something like this on Instagram is really not going to be that crazy. So in general, I feel like for more typical daily use, the camera here will be perfectly fine. And then here's some pictures taken with the A23 5G, and really same kind of thing. When it comes to which one is better between the two, I'll let you decide that for yourself, since after all, the photos are right here. But in general, I feel like either way, if you are looking for something for more casual daily use and you don't necessarily need the top of the line, but you still want a decently nice camera, either phone will get the job done. But again, remember, the A23 5G does have that ultra wide camera, whereas unfortunately the Moto G5G doesn't. So if you do want to get those wider angle photos, the Samsung will have an advantage. And then keep in mind, for video, both phones have a max recording quality of 1080p in both the rear and front cameras, so no 4K here. But considering these are more affordable entry-level devices, I'm really not surprised. Now for the RAM and processor, with the Moto G5G 2023, we're getting 4GB of RAM with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 480 Plus 5G processor. With the A23 5G, we're getting 4GB of RAM here as well, with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 695 5G processor. Now in general, I feel like between the two, the performance here is pretty similar. Maybe the A23 5G might be a tiny bit faster, but honestly for daily use, you're really not going to notice a huge difference. But that being said, for stuff like browsing the web, using social media, watching YouTube videos, or really any kind of streaming, and then maybe some light mobile gaming, for that sort of activity, either phone will definitely get the job done. But if you are going to be on your phone a bit more, doing more demanding activities, I wouldn't say they're going to feel slow, but at the same time, for a more heavy user, you might want to spend a bit more and get something faster, because despite being decently fast for what they are, these phones are really not meant for super heavy activity. But again, for casual daily use, despite the A23 5G being again maybe a tiny bit faster, either phone will definitely get the job done just fine. Now I ran a benchmark test on each phone here using Geekbench 6, and here are the results I got. So again, as you can see between the two, the A23 5G does have a bit of an advantage. Like I said before, it's not really huge or anything, but if the speed is really a priority for you, then definitely go with the Samsung. But if you're not really that concerned about having the fastest phone, and you really just need something for, again, more basic activities, something to get the job done, but you don't really care that much about having crazy fast performance, again, keep in mind, the Moto G5G is perfectly fine, and for those more basic tasks, it definitely will get the job done. For the batteries, both phones have 5000 mAh batteries, with the Motorola supporting 15-watt fast charging and the Samsung supporting 25. Now, the difference in fast charging is kind of subjective, but in my experience, I haven't really found it to be that big a deal. But just know, to fully utilize any phone's fast charging, you will need a decent fast charger. So with the Motorola, you'll need a 15-watt charger, and with the A23 5G, you'll need a 25-watt charger. And also keep in mind, neither phone comes with a wall adapter, so you will have to get one yourself. But aside from this, with 5000 mAh batteries, both phones have great battery life, so if that's more of a priority for you, definitely keep this in mind. And as these batteries wear out, which all batteries will eventually, phones like these that have larger batteries are going to last for quite a bit longer, so if you like to keep one phone for a longer time without having to replace it, either phone here will be a great choice. For the software, both phones have Android 13, but keep in mind, Samsung does tend to have better software support. I'm not saying the Moto G5G won't eventually get Android 14, but I don't know when it's going to be or if it's actually going to happen. Again, I'm assuming it probably will, but with the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G, I do know this phone will be getting Android 14, 15, and 16, so in general, if you like to get a bunch of different major updates, maybe you're keeping your phone for multiple years and you like to have the latest software, then in that case, the Samsung will have an advantage. But if you're maybe just keeping your phone for like a year or two, and you're not really that concerned about the software anyway, the Motorola will still be perfectly fine. And then for other features, unfortunately, the Moto G5G does not have NFC, but the A23 5G does. So if you like to use tap and pay, the Samsung will have an advantage. But in conclusion, which of these phones is better? Now in general, despite being close in a few ways, I do think overall, the A23 5G is the better device here. First of all, with the 1080p resolution, if you're consuming a lot of content, you will get a much better experience here. And I feel like at this point in 2023, most people who have a smartphone are going to be at least watching a decent amount of videos, if not playing games, browsing the web, using social media and stuff like that. The list really goes on. And I feel like nowadays having a 1080p resolution is more or less an expectation. And I don't know why Motorola gave this phone a 720p resolution. I mean, I guess it makes sense considering this is more of an entry-level phone, but we are seeing more and more lower-end phones that are getting 1080p displays. So I feel like at this point in 2023, 720p should really be more of a thing of the past. In addition to this, I feel like in general the camera on the A23 5G is a bit better. Now when it comes to overall photo quality, it's kind of debatable, but having an ultra-wide camera is definitely a nice advantage. The processor is also a bit faster, although again, it is pretty close and the Moto G5G is definitely not slow. But if you do want the faster phone between the two, the A23 5G will have an advantage. It also has slightly better fast charging, albeit again not really a huge difference, but the software support is also quite a bit better, and it does have NFC, which at this point in 2023, I feel like that should really be a standard. So in general, considering these phones are going for around the same price, I feel like the A23 5G just gives us quite a bit more value for the money. That being said though, the Moto G5G again is really not a bad phone, and the unlocked version at least does have the advantage when it comes to storage. So there is that. But at the end of the day, I feel like with these two phones, a pretty good percentage of people considering them are probably going to get them for free anyway. And if you could get either phone here for free, especially if you're getting the carrier version of the Moto G5G that probably doesn't have as much storage, again, I would personally go with the A23 5G, but if you are looking for a more affordable 5G phone, the Moto G5G will not be a bad choice either. But this concludes my comparison between the Motorola Moto G5G 2023 and the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G. Again, if you want to learn more about either phone individually, definitely check out the description, where I am linking to several other videos about them, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Kalipis Tech on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, I will see you in the next video.